This will be the next video in my series on Brahman. It should be the closeout video, the last video. In the one before this, which was a truncated video, it had some problems. I ran out of memory. Excuses, there's no excuse. I just didn't check the memory before I started filming it. But regardless of that, let's move on, or I hope you'll allow me to move on. So here I go. That's the introduction, by the way, as poor and as sad as it was. So the name of this video will be The Three Gunas. The subtitle is The Matrix of Creation in Yoga Philosophy. This is from a paper that I rewrote. I wrote it originally 5 days ago, and that's what's in that very first video I just spoke of a moment ago. The one preceding this one, which I ran out of time, so no, I'm basically just starting from scratch. I rewrote that paper today, retitled it, and because I haven't committed a lot of this to memory, I was just creating it. You'll pardon me if I go beyond my normal way of presentation and actually read here and there directly from the paper. So the philosophy of the three gunas lies at the heart of Indian metaphysics, and more particularly within the traditions of the Samkhya school, Samkhya school, and the Bhagavad Gita, the great book, the Song of God. I mistakenly called Mahabharata the Song of God in an earlier video, and I hope you caught that, and I hope you catch this video to see that I'm apologizing later. I'm putting correction into vocalizing a correction here. In Sanskrit, guna means strand or qualities, and these three gunas, sattva, S-A-T-T-V-A, rajas, R-A-J-A-S, and tamas, T-A-M-A-S, are considered to be the fundamental energies or tendencies that constitute all of manifested nature, which is prakriti. There are two great divisions in the universe, in the cosmos, and they are the creator, which a name for the creator that's usually coordinated with prakriti as nature. The creator is known as Purusha. Nature is known as prakriti. Their interplay is said to be responsible for the diversity, complexity, and dynamism that we experience in the world. And their influence extends to all forms of life, thought, behavior, and even the process of spiritual liberation, which, as you know and I know, is the goal of yoga and the practice of yoga, more especially the intellectual practice of yoga, which is yoga philosophy, which is my area of research for about 5 decades now. I consider myself not a master, but somewhat of an authority on the subject of yoga philosophy, historical and up to modern day. To a degree up to modern day. I'm a little old-fashioned, so not quite up to modern day. The gunas are instruments in Brahman's creation. Well, that's being a bit redundant, but that's what they are. So in the broader vision of Hindu cosmology, Brahman is the inevitable, which means you cannot really speak of him because he is the divine one. You can only give him names from the human vocabulary. He represents absolute reality because he is absolute reality from which all existence emerges. While Brahman itself, and that's not an insult to call Brahman it, that's a historical way of mentioning Brahman, is it, not he or she, but it. It's not an insult. It's historically accurate and respectful. Brahman itself is without qualities, which is Nirguna, which is without qualities, N-I-R-G-U-N-A, and it manifests itself as the universe through the creative power known as Maya. Well, Maya was spoken of a couple of videos ago, and for more information on Maya, you might want to review that video or see it for the very first time. I think this is either the 13th or 14th in this series of videos. I'm aiming for a totality of 50 videos by September the 30th, which is my next birthday, where I will celebrate 3/4 of a century on this planet. So, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are the fundamental strands of Prakriti, the matrix of creation. Thus, the Gunas are the subtle ingredients in Brahma's vast creative design. As described in various Upanishads, which are some of the great books of knowledge, and elaborated in the Bhagavad Gita, which is the great book, Brahman employing Maya projects the universe by activating the Gunas. Their dynamic equilibrium is disturbed, setting the cosmic wheel in motion. Now that's a grand verbal idea, isn't it? Setting the cosmic wheels in motion by activating the Gunas. So they are very, very important, not only in the history of yoga philosophy, but in the metaphysics of Hindu philosophy. And when those wheels are put into motion, the result is a multiplicity of worlds and beings. Worlds and beings. And the human race being amongst those mentioned beings. Well, that's not bad. Made it through on the front page anyway, didn't I? So I'll try not to read directly. I'll try to, what I basically do is ad-lib these. I look at the page, I get an idea, I expound on it, and here we go. So each aspect of existence, from the smallest atom to the highest intellect, is composed of and governed by the Gunas, ensuring that creation displays infinite variety, and change while remaining rooted in a deeper unity. And that's a quote from the Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, verses 3 and 4, and it alludes to the divine creative process. It doesn't exactly say it, but it alludes to it. That's my quote-unquote commentary on what I just mentioned here. There's another quote from the Gita, which was translated by Swami Sivananda. It says, "My womb is the great Brahma, Prakriti. In that I place the germ. Thence, O Bharata, is the birth of all beings, whatever forms are produced. O Kunteya, in a womb whatsoever, the great Brahman, Prakriti, is their womb, and I am the seed-giving father." Well, that's a little heavy. I think I'll be skipping. You can look that one up and interpret it any way you like. But most of the great sayings and the great quotes from the great books of yoga philosophy have been interpreted and commented on for near on a couple of thousand years. So your interpretation, once you read it and get enough background on the subject, is just as valid as anyone else's. These are just men's opinions of what it says. And the wiser they are, the closer is the opinion to the truth, I would say. I've written commentaries myself. So we're going to move on now past those quotations. I think we're bogging down in those, so I'm going to try to keep it a teeny bit, not that it can be lighter, but a teeny bit lighter. So what are these three gunas? Okay, let's break them down. Sattva, S-A-T-T-V-A, as I mentioned. I'll keep them in this order because that's how they were introduced. You don't have to look at them in this order. Sattva, in a few words, is the quality of purity, harmony, wisdom, and balance. Well, that's an honorable group of qualities. Rajas is the quality of activity, passion, restlessness, and change. That's also honorable. Now, the dark horse in the trio, in this group that makes up the characteristics of most men and things in the universe, blending these in different portions gives you a different outcome, like ingredients in a cake. gives you a different outcome. What you put in is what you get out once it's the baking and the cogelling of the properties placed within it have come to fruition through the baking process and the cooling. Tamas is the quality of inertia, darkness, ignorance, and stability. Thank goodness Sattva and Raja, the two of them together, outbalance Tamas. Otherwise, we would have an entirely evil universe. And there is evil in the universe. We know that historically. There's even evil amongst us this day on this planet in this time and place. I'm not getting into any particulars, but in my lifetime on this planet, there have been wars, and there was a good side and a bad side, and evil and good, and so far, well, I won't even go that far, but the balance through history, the good guys win the war, the balance, in balance. According to traditional texts, everything in the universe, both material and psychological, is a combination of these three qualities in varying degrees. Well, that's what I said a moment ago, but in my own wordage. The Gita, again, offers a poetic and profound exploration of the Gunas. Each guna is necessary, but the preponderance of one or the other can lead to different experiences and states of consciousness. Well, that makes perfect sense to me and should to you. According to traditional text, everything in the universe, I'm going to get a little more comfortable here if you don't mind. Plus, by adjusting myself the way I just did in this chair, I'm getting better light on my paperwork here. According to traditional text, everything in the universe, both material and psychological, is a combination of these three qualities in various degrees. Well, I just read the same start to that paragraph again. Sorry about that. Exploring their meaning, sources, quotes, relationships, and so forth. The three gunas, as I've named them already. Then this section here, which I'm going to skip, is again redundant from what I've already said. So we will save ourselves time from getting away from that. Well, I will read a portion of this. The Bhagavad Gita and the Samkhya Karika describes how the gunas interact to create the diversity of the world and shape human thoughts, behavior, and experiences. So they're very, very important in our day-to-day lives, historically and in the present tense. Human beings possess all three of these gunas in various degrees, and their predominant shifts with time, circumstances, and spiritual practice. Well, that's interesting. That could be, think about that one for a while. That's a very important one. And then it goes back to the study sources. The Gita, the Karika, and the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali. That's, I don't know how that got stuck in my brain and pops up here and there in my discourses. But when I first read it, I read it like a child would. I just read it phonetically, Patanjali. But it's actually Patanjali. So you'll see me use that name of that very historic gentleman. I apologize to his memory and I apologize to my listeners. But occasionally I will slip back into that childhood pronunciation, and I apologize for that. I truly do. Patanjali. So classical sources include the Bhagavad Gita, the Karika, and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, with commentaries by scholars and translations are cited for deeper studies. So once you get deeper into the philosophy of yoga, you will want to go and read these deeper sources, these greater books on the subject of yoga philosophy. That's how I am where I am today as far as my knowledge of these different sources. It's just how it works. The doctrines of the Gunas offers a framework for self-understanding, personal growth, These are all good things. And navigating the illusions of Maya towards liberation, another good thing. The Gunas are the primordial, now this is very important because I underlined it, so it's got to be important, right? The Gunas are the primordial tools through which Brahman, the ultimate reality, or cosmic spirit, unfolds and orchestrates the diversity of creation. And that's where the matrix concept came into my title. And here's more quotes from the scriptures and descriptions. We've had enough of that, I think. And we've had spiritual references. We'll skip past that. And now we'll go back. We'll be almost repeating a subject here, but you have to understand the Gunas have to do with human beings. The Gunas have to do with Brahman, the creator. The Gunas have to do with Maya, which is the illusionary force that came into being, which helped the creator Brahman project himself into the cosmic universe that we witness and think of as reality. We can't think on a godlike level. We have to think on a human level. And we do this by the illusion that is put out there by Maya, who is the great magician. Well, actually, Brahman is the great magician, but Maya is his assistant that does about 99% of his work for him, as far as illusionary things that humans have to not only endure but experience until they become enlightened. It's just an easier way for us to survive. If we woke up with godlike recognition, then we would be estranged from the rest of humanity for the rest of our human lifespan. You don't want to wake up as an enlightened person, because what happens then, I'm only working from an idea that's floated in my mind for a couple of 2 or 3 decades now. But I think it might be a lot harder to get along with. Even a bookworm, like I was in elementary and high school and so forth, and on through my education, we have a tougher time of it than the average person does, I assure you. Okay. So the Gunas and Maya, the concept of Maya, illusion, or the power whereby the universe becomes manifest and yet conceals its true nature, well, I just said that in other words, is intimately bound up with the Gunas. Maya in Vedantic thought, you can look up that phrase, Vedantic, Vedantic. That's a whole school, and Advaita and all of that. Those are different philosophies, different schools. Is the creative, I think I'm saying that right, I call them schools. They're just different concepts. Strike schools, put concept in your mind. Is the creative force that projects the world of appearances and duality. The Gunas are the very fabric of threads from which Maya weaves the phenomenal world. Well, again, this has been spoken of before, and it's just as true on the third repetition of that I do to you this evening. I told you I was tired, and I truly am. I try to be as truthful as I can with people. When I first meet you, I'm trying to be truthful. I met you 1,000 times. I try to be just as truthful. Okay. And the world as we perceive it is an interplay of sattva, rajas, and tamas. As long as we identify with the body and mind, we are subject to Maya's veiling power. Identifying with the body and mind, well, how do you get away from that identification? It is through the elevation of the intellect and becoming spiritually familiar with your Atman, your soul, which is on loan to you from the creator, Brahman, and it stays within you from your first breath to your last breath. And then it leaves the body as you would drop off an old suit of clothes, and then it goes forward to its reward or to its repetition, according to the Hindus, to its repetition through the cycle of regeneration or reincarnation. I don't necessarily ascribe to that philosophy, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not a Hindu priest, monk, or Swami, guru. I am strictly a philosopher. My philosophy, my field of philosophy is strictly connected with yoga philosophy. Yoga philosophy. Now we just went past Guna and Maya, that connection. Now we're going to go Gunas and human beings. Every human being is under the influence of the Gunas. Our thoughts, emotions, desires, and actions are shaped by their ever-shifting balance. Well, a lot of this is being redundant, sorry about that, but it's just the way. A good writer says things differently more than once in the paper he's presenting or in the discourse that he's recording, because you want to get those points across, and sometimes repeating them in different words or phrases or examples helps to get it across to the folks that are truly interested that may have missed the content of what you're saying the first time. So, individual predominance. One person may manifest a predominance of sattva, seeking knowledge. I'm one of those. I believe myself to be one of those. Truth and virtue. Another may be driven by rajas, ambition, activity, and desire. Well, I think that's more of the, well, I'm not going to name who it is, but you can imagine if you're out there and you're seeking ambition, activity, and desire, well, and that names quite a few people on the planet and their professions and their love and their audience, so to speak. While another may struggle with tamas, laziness, confusion, and ignorance. We all have a few of those in somewhere in our family tree, and even in our lives, we've run into those folks. These tendencies are mutable and can change over time or under different circumstances. Well, thank goodness, especially with tamas can change. I'm trying to get anyone that's dealing with the characteristics of tamas to change over to sattva, the knowledge seekers, the truth seekers, to join me on the path of yoga wisdom. Now, sattva prevails, overcoming rajas and tamas. Now rajas overcome sattva and tamas. Now tamas overcoming sattva and rajas. So you see, it's this switching around and this overbearing and dominance and recessive activity which is the blend of the emotions and the ways of different human beings, and even what happens in nature. Survival of the fittest would be incorporating some of those characteristics. The goal of yoga and spiritual practice is to increase sattva, as I'm getting ahead of myself. I wrote it, so obviously it was in my memory banks in some form, and so I've already expressed this. The goal of yoga and spiritual practice is to increase sattva, sublimate rajas, and reduce tamas. I'm so sorry. I have Parkinson's, and it affects my voice, and I get that little cough, and it seems like I'm burping, but I'm really not burping. It's just one of the facial things that happens to me when I speak for an elongated amount of time. So that's what's going on there with the higher spiritual realization. Even sattva as a quality of nature must eventually be transcended for liberation. I must give up my wisdom someday if I'm to eventually reach liberation, which can also be titled on earth self-realization, or as Dr. Carl Jung said, the coming about of a person reaching the level of individuation. Okay. So here's some practical examples for activities in daily life. A sattvic person may prefer a calm lifestyle. That's mine. Wholesome food, love wholesome food. Selfless service. All of these videos, I'm not looking for profit, support, followers. I'm just doing this to share what I've gained over the last 5 decades before I leave this earth. I'm sharing what I have learned and put together and written about. I've written books, I've written papers, dozens and dozens, papers galore. So, again, Rajestic person, I like that. Rajasic is what it's actually supposed to be, not Rajestic. rajasic person in restless, ambitious, competitive activities, often seeking power, achievement, or sensory pleasures. Well, that would point to quite a few people on the world stage nowadays, and historically. Napoleon was probably one of those. Caesar, I know, was one of those, and so forth. A tamasic person may experience lethargy, confusion, procrastination, and apathy, often neglecting well-being or personal growth. We've all run into these characters. They may be friends, families, or who knows, even past lovers. Who knows? And in my case, being so old, who cares? Just I ignore those kind of people. The best way to deal with people that are disagreeable or show a lot of negative emotion for you is not to engage them and try to convert them. You will learn this with time. You know, I'm not a missionary. The best way to deal with those type of folks is to be polite and, as often as possible, ignore any verbal or physical engagement with them. Polite first, ignored later. Most people experience all three of these gunas, sometimes in a single day. Well, I've had that today, I can promise you. The key in yogic and Vedanic teachings is self-awareness. If you're aware of yourself, then you're aware of how your emotions and your mind are being disturbed or excited by external forces entering into your system and changing these states of mind. So when that happens, you want to intentionally shift towards sattva. If anything negative comes, shift towards sattva. Anything enthusiastic comes, shift for sattva. Sattva also includes calmness. Calmness is calmness is the right default setting for the human mind. Not excitement, not excitement, not depression. Just easy as she goes, calmness. That's about the right way of looking at the world and to dealing with the world. Okay? And most people experience these gunas, as I said. You notice which guna is dominant and intentionally shift towards sattva through the right living, right thoughtful association. As I said, don't let negative people in your life, just politely let them go in conversation, and then basically to ignore them on a social level is the best way. Proper diet and meditation, those are all principles of yoga. Both the physical side of yoga and the intellectual side of yoga. Yoga philosophy is on the intellectual side. And here's the conclusion. Finally, we come to a conclusion. Good gosh, we're going to make this in under 30 minutes. I thought it'd be an hour at least. Well, I did quite well by editing as I went, didn't I? Yeah, or didn't we? The doctrine of the three gunas is one of the most elegant and useful tools in Hindi and yoga philosophy for understanding the complexity of life, the mind, and the path for self-realization. From the highest perspective, which is the God's eye view, the gunas are not accidental, but are the very energy set in motion by Brahman's will. By recognizing the presence of sattva, rajas, and tamas in all aspects, well, these old hands in that dry paper. I'll probably be able to separate these two pages or not. Well, here it comes, finally. The aspects of existence. Human beings can learn to navigate the world, of Maya with greater wisdom and eventually transcend the limitations of material nature. That deserves a second reading. Of existence. Human beings can learn to navigate the world of Maya with greater wisdom and eventually transcend the limitations of material nature, rediscovering the pure, unconditioned self within, and in doing so, glimpse the subtle, sublime order behind Brahman's creation, behind the matrix, the Brahman's matrix. And there it ends. Thus ends the lesson. I want to thank you all very much for being so patient with me And I'll close with my usual phrase, be good to yourself, be good to others, pass those two ideas on to friends, families, and even strangers. And who knows, someday we might all wake up in a new world and say, isn't it marvelous how it's all changed back to being a good place to be? Good night and thank you.